This is Anthony Pascal.
And this is Laurie Ulster, and this is the All Access Star Trek podcast. Today we are going to be reviewing Star Trek Discovery, episode 509, Hard to Believe, with Lisa Klink, who joined us for the review. But first, we're going to do the news, and wow, we're making up for last week when there really wasn't a lot of news, with some pretty big news, and something I am so excited about, which is that Holly Hunter, the Holly Hunter, is going to be leading the Star Trek Starfleet Academy series, playing the Chancellor and a captain, but Chancellor of Starfleet Academy.
The first official member of the cast announced.
Even though we all know Mary Wiseman will be there.
Yeah, this is not a rumor or something just from the trades. They sent out a press release. They're making a big deal out of this. I mean, multiple Academy Award nominations and a win, and I think she's won an Emmy. She's certainly been nominated a few times. I've loved Holly Hunter since Raising Arizona in the 80s.
I've loved Holly Hunter since Broadcast News, which is one of my top 5 all-time movies, the most quotable movie next to maybe Ghostbusters, right up there. She's so brilliant. I love her in everything. I can't believe she's going to join Star Trek. I thought maybe I made it up in my head and had a dream that Holly Hunter was joining Star Trek. Like, I messaged my family and said, listen.
I can only imagine that the character was written as a Holly Hunter type, so probably like whip smart, no nonsense, possibly with a Southern accent.
Let's hope.
Hopefully an alien with a Southern accent. That would be hilarious.
I can't imagine she'd want to do tons of makeup unless she's a secret Star Trek fan and we've never known and she's always wanted to be an alien. But I don't know. I'm going to guess it's more of a Bajoran nose, like a small kind of thing if she is one. But
yeah, subtle alien.
But the truth is she can play anything. She has range. There is no character she can't play.
She's Elastigirl. She's all sorts of things. So it shows a commitment from Paramount Plus to the series.
Oh, yeah.
They've got high profile people on, the other shows, Taylor Sheridan shows, especially, Helen Mirren and
Harrison Ford.
Yeah. The Sylvester Stallone. But the Star Trek shows haven't done that, really. I mean, Michelle Yeoh is bigger now than she was when they brought her in for Discovery. I mean, I remember when she was on Discovery, I'm like, oh, yeah, that's pretty cool. She was in Crouching Tiger, but
yes, but she wasn't at she didn't have the status that she has now. Throwing in, like, you got Carol Kane and Amanda Plummer, but they weren't the stars of the show. I mean, right. Amanda Plummer had a huge role in Picard season 3.
And Anson Mount was, solid. He'd led a Marvel show and stuff, but this is a big deal. And not that those weren't big deals at all.
No, but I didn't know who Anson Mount was. I'll be honest.
Oh, I was a big fan of his before. I mean, you never watched the show with him and Colmini, the Western? It was a great show. Hell on Wheels. Oh, you got to check it out.
The other thing about having Holly Hunter on the show is, everyone talks about, it's just for the kids. It's just for the, the CW kind of audience. And this is also a way of making sure that, like, the older folks are going to pay some attention.
Right. There's going to be a faculty. They'll have their own stories. I mean, someone's got to teach these kids something. It's interesting that she's being referred to as a captain instead of like an admiral heading up the academy. We know that there's going to be space stuff and ships. I'm wondering if when they go out on little missions or whatever, that she will be the captain of whatever the ship is that they use on the show. I'm guessing yes.
Yeah, it would make sense. Captain Holly Hunter. I'm in.
There is a new synopsis for the show. It does sound CWE-ish, but there is some Trekifying in there. It reads, Starfleet Academy introduces viewers to a young group of cadets who come together to pursue a common dream of hope and optimism. Under the watchful, demanding eyes of their instructors, they discover what it takes to become Starfleet officers as they navigate blossoming friendships, explosive rivalries, first loves. There's your CW angle. But here's the interesting bit, and a new enemy threat that threatens both the Academy and the Federation itself.
Well, that's, it is a Discovery spinoff.
Right.
So they have to have something that threatens everything.
Hopefully it is a new thing, and Holly Hunter will talk some sense into these stupid aliens. Anyway, that's it for the Academy. That's all we know. It's still filming this summer, and we may not see it for a couple years. It is interesting. I've seen people commenting like, okay, well, maybe the show won't suck.
Right, because of Holly Hunter. Because they think like Holly Hunter wouldn't sign on to a show that sucked.
I mean, sign on to a show that's going to shoot for 5-6 months at a time in Toronto.
In Toronto, yep. She signed on because she wants to do it. I mean, really, folks, I'm just going to say, if you haven't seen broadcast news, just go stop what you're doing and go watch it. It's brilliant.
And she got her first Academy Award nomination.
Yep, there you go. All right, well, speaking of movies, here's my segue. We have actual movie news. Skeptical as some may choose to be.
Well, I'm not skeptical. I've been saying Paramount is committed to getting Star Trek back into theaters. And this news this week shows that they are making behind-the-scenes moves to make that happen. They are bringing in a new producer for the Origin movie, the untitled Star Trek Origin movie, which is going to be the next movie, probably in 2026. And it's a guy named Simon Kinberg. People may be familiar with his name. He's basically been associated with every X-Men movie that's come out in the last couple decades. He's written some, he directed one, he's produced all of them. He's just kind of one of those Hollywood guys. He's not like a Noah Hall. He's not an auteur. He's done some writing. He's produced some really great movies like The Martian, which garnered him a Academy Award nomination for Best Picture. But he's also produced some of those X-Men movies, especially the one he directed, Dark Phoenix. Not a great movie.
Yeah, I skipped that one.
But it does feel like they are transitioning for him to not only produce this movie, but kind of become the new JJ. Like
have Alex being the TV guy and Simon as the movie guy.
Yeah, even though JJ is still hovering around and involved and still producing the supposed Beyond sequel. And that's kind of the important thing so there is a direct sequel to Star Trek Beyond, the so-called Star Trek 4 that's still in development. Chris Pine still wants to see a script.
So does everybody else.
Yeah, they just hired another script writer. So that's in parallel. But the next movie is going to be this Origin movie, and the trades and Puck, which is this newsletter, which I am a big fan of. This is being described as a reboot, this movie. That term has many different meanings. Discovery is kind of a reboot of the TV franchise, even though it's set in the canon universe. So reboot can just mean, from a marketing point of view, where you're
like restarting.
Yeah, just kind of reintroducing audiences, trying to build buzz again. It does sound like this is a canon reboot as well.
Well, this is what it said. It said the project is said to be set decades before the events of the 2009 movie.
The more rebooty part is likely around modern times, like today, and it's said to involve the creation of Starfleet and humankind's first contact with alien life.
Not the Vulcans?
It's probably the Vulcans, but the point is, we've seen that. We know when that is. That isn't in modern times. It's in 40 years or so. It's after a world war. It's well-trodden ground. Starfleet was actually formed decades later, Earth Starfleet, and then, and that's all well-trodden on Enterprise. I'm starting to feel like this is a full-on reboot. Is it a parallel universe, or is it just a Marvel-like, elsewhere new universe where there are elements of Star Trek, there's warp drives and transporters and Vulcans and Klingons, but it's just its own canon timeline. It is what Ron Moore, by the way, advocated when he did his Battlestar Galactica reboot. Decades ago, he said, there's too much Star Trek canon. If I were ever to do it, I would start over, like he did with Battlestar. So the idea of starting over, if the great Ron Moore thinks it's a good idea, it's not to be dismissed, but it is certainly risky.
And different if the great Ron Moore isn't the one doing it.
Fair, very, very fair enough.
Like if Ron Moore wants to restart it, I'd be like, okay, I'm interested in what you have to say about that. I bet you're going to do something interesting. But I feel like I never feel like it's someone's great vision when they talk about these movies. Like, you know, I mean, look, when the JJ movies came out, I thought I was all in for the alternate take on these characters. Like, what if Kirk's life had been totally different? Was an interesting idea.
Yeah.
You know, I thought, good for you for I think that makes sense. It's something worth trying.
And the way they brought in Leonard Nimoy, and they actually, you know, worked it out so that technically the 2009 Star Trek movie is a sequel to Nemesis, because it starts after Nemesis and then Nimoy goes back in time. So, you know, part of it isn't in the canon universe. So it is all tied together, unlike the Ron Moore Battlestar Galactica, where it's just, we're calling it Battlestar Galactica, but it has nothing to do with the other show, except that it's got Cylons and colonies and all the same stuff. If this is set, I guess they'll have a Zefram Cochrane character, probably, but everything else is...
I hope they do. I mean, honestly, it is weird. It's a little weird. We have First Contact, and it's a great movie.
What they're trying to do is establish an origin story, literally, for the Star Trek universe, which is the creation of Starfleet, and they're trying to show how that's connected to our modern age, to make a connection to modern audiences, which seems very literal instead of just setting it in, you know, the 23rd century or whatever. I'm not going to dismiss this, nor am I going to dismiss Kinberg. Yeah, you know, he's not Noah Hawley.
It's not the most exciting news, is all I'm saying.
No,
it is,
yeah. It isn't news. Like, oh my God, they got Kinberg. I was not, you know.
He's no Holly Hunter, is what you're saying.
Yeah, but I'm also, it's, you know, if he brings in talented people, you know, and does good casting, then it could work. There's a very low floor, but also a very high ceiling. So I'm not going to make any judgments until we start to learn more about this movie.
Well,
I mean, I like the director. You know, he's the guy who did the USS Callister, and he's a huge Star Trek fan. I have faith in him. The guy's like a massive Star Trek 6 fan. I just don't see this guy putting out a schlocky piece of crap, you know, that doesn't pay respect to the Star Trek franchise, meaning, you know, the director. I wouldn't put it past Kinberg, to be honest.
Okay, well, we'll wait and see what happens, and we will report when we have more information. So let's move back into the world of TV. We've done TV movies. Now we're going back to TV, which is news that has everybody abuzz, which is Terry Matalas has now moved over to the Marvel franchise, and he's going to be showrunning a new series.
Ever since Picard wrapped, pretty much for the last year, I've known that I was going to have to write this article.
Yeah.
Terry was hot stuff after Picard season 3, getting a lot of buzz. Paramount was not chomping at the bit to do Legacy, so someone was going to pick him up, and we started to get our hints earlier this year when he was on a podcast with Kevin Feige.
Yeah.
You know, and Kevin was like, "Man, you're just the best."
Picard season 3 was so good. You're the best.
Now, this, as I understand, this is not an exclusive deal. So he's going to be the executive producer and showrunner on a Marvel series called Vision, which, you know, the Paul Bettany character.
Was it called? I don't know if it's. I think it's untitled, but it's
untitled. It's about Vision with Paul Bettany, coming back after WandaVision. The irony is he's not going to do a Picard spinoff. He's doing a WandaVision spinoff.
Yep.
So he's still doing a spinoff. Wrong franchise, but there you go. You know, so this is going to pretty much be his life for the next couple of years, but he can still do other things. And to be honest, you know, Marvel, they call things series, but most of them end up being miniseries, essentially.
Yeah, like not a lot of episodes.
Yeah, WandaVision was, you know, just a single season, and then it spawned 2 spinoffs. The other spinoff being the Agatha spinoff.
I mean, look, congratulations, Terry, because that's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm very happy for him. He's earned it. He deserves it. I'm sure it'll be great. I'm definitely going to watch it. And I hope that doesn't preclude some kind of eventual, maybe a nice streaming movie or some kind of Star Trek-y Picardy thing that he could do.
He will come back to Star Trek if Star Trek asks.
Yep.
But in the short term, that's just not happening for multiple reasons.
They might have to cough up a little more money.
Yeah. Now he's getting... He's getting Marvel money now. He's getting
Marvel cash, so,
I hope that, because he has a great team, some of which he brought over from 12 Monkeys.
Yeah, I hope that he brings in, like, Dave Blass and Liz and a bunch of those people.
His writer's room had a few, the Picard writer's room had a few 12 Monkeys guys.
Yeah.
And he brought in some of the actors, too, right? In
I was going to say, I have a feeling we're going to see some familiar faces.
Todd Stashwick is going to end up in the MCU. There's no doubt about that.
Jerry Ryan might show up, too.
We may get some legacy Star Trek characters on a Terry Matalas show after all.
Yeah, there you go.
So we've got a little bit of Strange New Worlds news, which is that they've wrapped-ish. We're calling it ish. Season 3.
We're quoting Anson Mount.
Right.
Who said they've wrapped-ish, because John from Screen Rant posted that they'd wrapped, and then Anson was like, well, wrapped-ish. He said, I still have a few more scenes to do today, and some others have a few more scenes tomorrow.
Right. Like today we're recording this on Thursday the 23rd. Today appears to be Jess Bush's last day. She posted a thing saying last day vibes, and it was like a picture of a blonde wig being aired out behind her trailer. It does also appear that they've probably finished the finale a couple weeks ago, or at least a week ago, and that they've actually been doing pickups, reshoots, stuff like that. Because Frakes was up there last week doing some more shooting on his episode. And they started in the second week of December.
Yeah.
Been a long road.
Getting from there to here. All right. And then Prodigy, the news is that there's no news yet. So far it's not on the June slate for Netflix, which we would know by now if it was. And the Hagemans have tweeted like, we're holding tight just like everyone else, but we know it's worth the wait. So they're saying, please be patient.
The March France drop, I think, was a kick in the whatevers, in that it's now getting hard to wait knowing that it's out there, albeit in French. And, people, it's hard to avoid spoilers. That being said, it's only been 5 months since it was released. The first season was re-released from Netflix's perspective. Now, from a fan's perspective, it's been 17 months.
Yeah.
Since it was on Paramount Plus.
Feels like 17 years.
Yeah. The worry is that Netflix sees this as an annual show. And they're like, okay, we did season 1 on Christmas, season 2, Christmas 2024. That would be a very long wait. Fingers crossed they will drop it between the end of Discovery and the beginning of Lower Decks, that they're coordinating with CBS Studios and Paramount Plus, and it shows up in like July or September or August, maybe.
Let's hope.
Yeah.
I mean, I was in France, but I was on a boat, so I didn't watch it. They didn't have it beaming in.
I do believe that they will put some publicity behind it, that it won't just show up on their list of July shows, get dropped, and, maybe they do a trailer and that's the end of it. That there's a publicity tour and they get the actors out there and all that,
Let's hope. All right. Well, on to Star Trek Discovery, which is moving up the Nielsen chart, it turns out.
Third week in a row. It started at 10, then at 9. Latest is 8.
Nice.
So it's going in the right direction. More importantly, the minutes viewed number has gone up. So the final season is getting watched. Interestingly, this week was the first time I've ever seen this. 2 Paramount Plus shows were on the chart. The other being Knuckles. For your non-video games people, that is a character from the Sonic the Hedgehog universe. And there's a whole Sonic the Hedgehog or Knuckles miniseries that dropped the same week as episode 5 of Discovery. So that had 6 episodes drop all at once. That's actually number 6 on the chart.
People are binging Knuckles.
Knuckles.
Whatever.
I've heard good things about the Knuckles. Certainly the fans seem to like it, but
Yeah.
it's just a fun. Idris Elba's in it. Star Trek connection. There you go.
Sure. So you had a chat with Blu del Barrio about this episode of Star Trek Discovery, about this week's episode. So there will be a full interview on the site, but I think we should listen to some of it. We should start with, you talked to Blu about going in disguise as a Breen.
The old going in disguise thing is such classic Star Trek. What was it like wearing that thing? And did you feel like you, as Adira, kind of stood out? Because they've hired these, like, big guys to play the Breen. And, you know, you're not nearly as big as these guys. Like, did you feel like you stood out? Like, why isn't anybody noticing how I'm the smallest Breen?
Yeah, that was the first thing I asked. Because when I was like, okay, it's me and Patrick, and then I saw all the other Breen, and I was like, I'm 5'2". I'm like the size of a shoe. This doesn't make sense. How are we shooting this so that that's not completely obvious? / is it going to be a problem? Because yeah, they're all like, you know, sky high. I think if anything, I think they like hit it / shot it in a really smart way. And also I think they made it so that the thing that would probably give Adira away is like their physical tendencies, you know. I feel like that's what would give them away more so than their height, maybe, in terms of how we filmed it. But if it was, you know, if we were there in the room, you could absolutely see that I was like way shorter than everybody else.
You know, it's funny. I was a little nervous asking the question because I'm essentially asking, you know, you are, short.
But you could have said that you could have had the same conversation with Sonequa, because Sonequa's tiny. So
yeah, because it's true. In the episode, when you're watching it, they did a good job of not making it clear how much smaller Adira was.
Right. But it was obvious in the Book and Michael scenes that Michael was smaller. Although technically that didn't even have to be them. It could have been anybody.
All the Breen were pretty large fellows. I think someone would have noticed.
No, and they could have made Adira's suit bigger. I mean, if the transporter can change Tilly's hair and put Book's coat back on, then it could definitely make a bigger Breen suit. There was no reason for the suits to actually be the size of their bodies.
Good point. But it was really Blu in there. Blu did the action scenes.
Yeah.
No stunt double. They were really excited about that, getting to do action.
That's fine, I bet. Well, you go on Star Trek and you're like, where's my phaser?
Exactly. So this is another angle that we've talked about. I wanted to find out about what they thought of Adira's backstory.
One of the unique things about the character on this show is that they are the only 32nd century person from Earth. Everyone else is from Earth from the past or an alien from the future or whatever. But we really don't know much about that. Like, are there things you know? Because like writers and said, oh, here's some stuff about Adira's backstory, or things you wish you knew about Adira and their history on Earth and their backstory and that kind of stuff.
That is something, thank you for asking that. That's something that I always wanted to go back to, because all I know is what was in those episodes in season 3 of showing that little tiny bit of history with Gray before the burn. So there's stuff that I had in my head kind of worked out of like a bit of that pre-life, but no, I was always hoping that we would go back and maybe get a little bit more of that history of what their life was like before they went on Discovery. But yeah, no, nothing was ever written, so we don't have any like canon on it.
Well, because as I understand, for the show Academy, it's set in San Francisco as opposed to on Discovery, it's set at the HQ. So maybe there's Adira shows up to deal with, annoying brother or whatever, or something, some Earth-related story.
Brother. Yeah, no, that would be cool if they could go home and deal. Their family was always a big question for me. What do they have left on Earth? Do they have anything left on Earth? That was always big.
Yeah, I was always really interested in Adira's backstory. Like, I was bummed that they never explored them. Like, when Adira suddenly woke up and had a Trill symbiont.
Yeah.
You know, like that, because that was like, I don't remember anything until that happened. So I do feel like there's a whole lot more to discover about Adira and where they came from. So that's another reason I'm hoping Adira turns up in the Starfleet Academy show.
I just think it's a big deal that Adira is from the 32nd century, as is Vance and others, and Book. But there isn't a lot of talk about how these people from the 23rd century are all that different from each other, when there should be kind of huge cultural, context differences between these people, references they don't understand, connections, between, members of the crew in the different centuries.
Yeah, things should come up.
I mean, look at, they made a big joke of this in the Marvel movies when Captain America missed like 6 decades of time or something, so I think missing out on 8 centuries, 9 centuries, it would come up more than it does.
Agreed.
So now we're going to play our review, which we previously recorded with Lisa Klink. This was done over Zoom, so you'll notice a kind of switch in audio style, as it were.
So it's time to start our review of episode 509 of Star Trek Discovery, Lagrange Point. I checked the pronunciation after I heard Telly say it. And we are very excited to be joined for this review by Lisa Klink, who was a writer on Deep Space Nine and Voyager, several seasons of Voyager, co-hosts the Treksperts Briefing Room podcast, and I recently learned that she's a 5-time Jeopardy champion.
Hello.
Welcome, Lisa.
Happy to be here.
I'm now intimidated. The Jeopardy thing throws me. So,
I promise, no trivia.
Excellent. Before we talk about this episode, how have you been feeling, Lisa, about season 5 in general?
In general, I have to say I'm not crazy about the find the clues storyline. It feels artificial to me. It feels like the writers coming up with something rather than something that scientists would actually do. I buy that they would like hide it somewhere and maybe have like a guardian there, guarding it or something like that. But the tests, I think, haven't really been proving that somebody is worthy of having the power of life and power of creation.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It hasn't quite worked for me.
I don't know how anyone would prove that they're worthy of that. Like, as we've been watching, we keep saying, we don't think anybody should have this tech.
Yeah. That's a legitimate point too.
I think it was just a perhaps oversimplified way for them to structure the season to make it a little more episodic, which is something they wanted to do, to give it a quest. So it's almost it's a literal quest, because they wanted a more Indiana Jones vibe. But I could see your point on the execution. Maybe it hasn't worked entirely, but I get, certainly I admire the intention.
I totally get what the writers are after, but I feel like I see the writers' fingerprints on it.
Yeah. I mean, that's something Laurie and I talk about a lot, is when you can see what you're going for. Yeah. It takes you out of the episode.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Are you enjoying the ride a little bit though?
Yeah, no, I think the individual episodes are fun. It's always fun to see our characters being tested, and pushed to their limits, and to see really how they respond when they're really put on the spot. And I think that anything that can do that is a good idea.
So let's talk about Lagrange Point. Again, back to Lisa. Did you enjoy the episode?
I did. I liked it, I think, because they found the thing. They found the tech. And so it just became a question of who gets possession of the tech. And that seemed like it was really interesting because it was strategic. How do we defeat the Breen or get it from the Breen, who are far more powerful than we are, knowing what we know about them. And it just seemed like it was really a fun problem to solve.
Yeah, I liked they were trying to do a lot of things, but certainly Frakes, who directed this episode, was going for kind of a heist movie vibe at times. Yeah. There was a little heist movie montage at one point. And the music was very, I don't know, it just felt Ocean's, I don't know. How many people were on the team? Ocean's 4, I guess. They couldn't afford 11 or,
right.
But still, I liked that aspect of, their whole plan, and how it kind of fell apart at times. There was a lot of humor. I mean, because even though it's super high stakes, this had a lot of lighter moments in it, even without Tig Notaro.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, I thought that it was kind of a light feel for such a weighty prize that we were going after.
Part of that, I think, came from the really good pacing. Like, it just moved along so fast so that the moments, they came and went, people got their quips in, they got their moments, and the story was fun. We got Saru back, who's been sorely missed the last few episodes. And now he's going to be a big hero. He's still Action Saru because he's about to go in and try and save the day. And I thought this was a shining episode for Captain Michael Burnham being a fantastic, decisive, bold, confident leader of a captain.
Yeah, no, she definitely was willing to put herself out on the line, and then especially at the end. So I agree that this really put her in a good light.
We had multiple great, captain leader moments. Saru volunteering, both on the emotional side, but also it was the logical thing to do from his perspective. Burnham going on the away mission and leading that. And then Rayner really stepping up on the ship. They made a big deal about him sitting in the chair, but they had earned that, I think, because they kind of established that earlier in the season. And he's been on his own little journey after being demoted. So, everyone is playing at the top of their game. And I'd have to add, at the lower end, this was a great episode for Adira, I think, as well. I don't know if, Adira has gone on nothing dangerous. This is, I think, Adira's first kind of tactical mission, as it were.
I love the pairing of Adira and Reese. We have never seen those two together. That was a nice duo.
And to see Reese at all, or to see him really step up and do something.
He's one of the few people that has got to sit in the captain's chair. I guess he's kind of like the
he's the last man standing.
Well, he's like it was always Scotty when Spock and Kirk weren't around. They'd have Scotty, so he's kind of the third in command, maybe, of the ship.
I think so, and I think that's why Rayner asked Telly to step in as second in command, because after that they don't seem to have anybody who's next. Although this time Tilly has earned it.
Yes.
Like the last time they made Tilly first officer, we were all like, what the hell? I love her, not the right choice, and she didn't do a great job. And this time it was like, yep, she's earned it, she's right. They also have a relationship. So, and he's right, she's smart, she's a leader.
Yeah, absolutely.
It also kind of pays off. They've had their own little arc starting in the episode when she had to introduce him to the crew and they had all those weird conversations. And they've had a bit of a journey through the season as well. And so she's I think she's a proxy for the crew in a sense to say, we accept you, now sit in the damn chair.
Right.
And I did think they were hanging a lantern. Again, we could see what the writer's doing. Because when he said, oh, your touchy-feely stuff, I feel like they're self-aware of how overly emotional and feelings-based the show is. And even though that they're still doing it, they're at least going to acknowledge it.
Yeah. I'd agree with that.
His whole line was so good that I need to quote him. Because he said, if we were stuck in a foxhole together, I wouldn't kill you. That is, unless you gave me more of that warm and fuzzy encouragement that I don't need. Yeah. And then she just grins at him, saying, like, I get it. You love me.
Yeah. Yeah.
You talked about the pacing, and I did feel like it was done, but there's a couple moments where I think it didn't work.
One in particular.
I'll start with the one at the end, and maybe it was just me. So, it's an amazing plan. They're going to crash the ship through the shield. They're going to break open the shuttle bay. Everything's going to go flying. And super dangerous, right? And they show Book. He says goodbye to Michael. I'm going to talk more about that in a second. They break through. Then they cut to the bridge, and Book is standing there in his leather jacket. And I'm like, how the fuck did he get there? And so I rewound, and the action explosion scene, if you look really closely, there's like a little tiny beam out glimmer and sound. So we're supposed to think that in those 5 Book was beamed to the bridge, changed into his cool leather jacket, and then went in to tell Rayner, oh, Michael's in the portal, and I feel like a scene was cut, or They should have shown him beaming onto the bridge.
Yeah.
And they shouldn't have changed his costume.
No.
But like, so because this is the shortest episode of the season, it's like, it felt like, I don't know if they were running out of money or what, but the other thing was the more problematic one was they were on the Breen ship and Michael does the emotional sidebar with Book to tell him about the last episode. And I felt like they totally didn't need that scene because there's the moment later when she goes into the portal and they have that look. It was kind of a Han and Leia Empire situation. And I felt like they could have said nothing. She could have started to say, I love you or something short there. And they could have built up to it by her trying to talk to Book, but they kept on getting distracted. But they did this kind of 1 minute, let's talk about our feelings scene.
When they were in a hurry.
When they were surrounded by Breen, mean, it was just, it was so cliched Discovery. It's all, I can't maybe they knew what they were doing and they're like, let's just do it again because it's what we do. But I felt like they should have made fun of themselves and tried to do it and then failed, because it was so inappropriate.
Yeah, it was.
I would agree. And I think if they really wanted to have that conversation, to have her actually say, I'm sorry, and him say, I'm sorry too, there was a much better time. It could have been them prepping for the mission.
Yeah, when they thought they were both going to get sucked out into space and die.
Or even before they
left even. Yeah.
While they were still on the Discovery, there was, I guess, time. I mean, they had time to do a heist movie montage. They must have had time to talk about it. But they do these shortcuts. I mean, there was like, sometimes I feel like they also run out of characters. Like at the end.
There's nobody in engineering. Like, it was weird that Book is helping in engineering. They're sort of acting like, why is he here? And I'm thinking, don't you have a team?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, they never built an engineering set. So we've just, Stamets Lab has become, quote, engineering. And he is the engineer when the weeks that Tig Notaro can't be in Toronto.
When Tig's doing stand-up.
Right. And, but then at the end, there's this, so Rayner orders the red alert. He says, fire every weapon. And then you have this quiet moment and it's a nice moment where Culber is in engineering with his husband concerned about Adira. Mm-hmm. But then you go, why are you two alone? And why isn't the doctor in sickbay?
Oh, I got something for that one. I mean, okay. Why he's alone? Why there's nobody else in engineering I can't answer that because it doesn't make sense. But first of all, with their beaming, they're constantly beaming from one location to the other. So he can be in sickbay. He doesn't have to run or take a turbo lift.
Okay. Fair enough.
And when Adira left, Stamets was really worried. Culber was much calmer and more zen about it. And so then he shows up to see how Stamets is doing. And then it was kind of Stamets' turn to say, no, we're good, and comfort Culber. So it was if my kid was off on a mission, I would go find my husband.
Okay.
Yeah, I can go with that.
Yeah. The glaring one was the Michael and Book sidebar.
Yeah.
In Breen disguise. Like, what did other Breen hear did the Breen hear their conversation?
Well, the Breen never heard anybody talking to Discovery either. It's one of those magic tech things where the Breen hear them when they talk to the Breen. But when Reese and Adira were talking to Discovery, they weren't worried that somebody was hearing them.
I liked how they did use the kind of Iron Man tech where if someone's in a helmet, because we've been dealing with this all season of the Breen have no expression. You can't tell one from the other. But here they realize, like, okay, we need to see our characters. So they use the old Iron Man trick of just putting a camera on their face and a little HUD around them. Stuff like that.
It took me a minute. Like, I didn't love it at first. And then I was like, you know what? It's the best way to do it. And I think between the directing and the editing, they did a really nice job of making sure that you really did know who was doing what and what was going on. It was tricky, especially during, like, when Michael and Book start the fight to try to distract and all that. I think they did that must have been hard to pull together and make it work visually, and it did.
Well, one thing that really helped was their height difference. You know, you have tiny little Burnham, you know, standing surrounded by these 6-foot Breen, and that helped kind of tell us, you know, who is Burnham.
Well, what about Blu del Barrio, who is even
smaller?
Right. So, you know, that they I talked to Blu about that, and they used kind of directly, because that was something that they were wondering, because they would stand out on the bridge and they were supposed to be undercover. So they used kind of the angles so it wasn't as obvious.
Right.
I thought that was kind of funny that they were the littlest breed. Adorable.
Yeah.
Yes.
So.
The sweetest one. I also just think the directing in this one really helped, you know, A+ Frakes move the story forward without getting in the way. Sometimes with Discovery, the directing for me has gotten in the way. Like, let's do a cool shot and let's do this. And it's hard to tell what's going on. And there was a lot of action in this one. And I felt like I always had a very clear sense of where people were in relation to each other and what was going on and what had to be accomplished. So that combined with the character moments made this one mostly a big win for me.
Yeah, I would agree with that everything was very clear. You understood who was trying to do what and what was standing in their way. And yeah.
Of course, one thing that Frakes is really good at are bridge scenes. And I thought he did a great job with that. You really got a sense of the tension on the bridge and the pacing with Rayner. And when Rayner finally sits down and he does a tiny little Picard maneuver, if you notice.
He tugged on his uniform. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't even notice.
But then he does a double fist pound on the chair. I guess that's his signature move. At least they didn't give him a catchplease. That would have been.
He should have sniffed. That's his signature move.
That's right.
He does this move that I love with the sniffing. Let me ask you guys both this. Like, I felt like in a lot of those bridge scenes, for me, I think they would have worked better if we'd had our familiar faces. I know there are reasons that they're not there, but like if Detmer and Owo and, you know, Bryce and all those folks had been there, that all would have had more impact for me.
I would agree with that. You know, especially when they had that little exchange about, you know, I'm buying drinks and it's got to be, you know, 5 o'clock somewhere. That, again, I felt a little bit like it came from nowhere. But I think you're right that if it had been people that we were familiar with and that we knew they were friends, that might have played better.
I also didn't love it's got to be 5 o'clock somewhere. Like, you're at work.
It's well, I mean, that's all, you know, the bridge is always overly familiar on the new Trek shows, and especially this one. But I would disagree with that in that Detmer and Owo have pretty much been absent this season. So the character bit and arc this season has been Rayner connecting with this crew. And Rayner's been connecting with these new people, with, you know, Gallo and Jemison and the other one, I can't remember their name, but it doesn't matter. But the point is, they are the ones who've been there. They're the ones who are building this relationship with Rayner. So it's the payoff with them. I felt that had actually worked. Although I do miss Detmer and Owo.
But don't you remember when we found out that they were taking the Enterprise? He was like, they deserve it. So he's bonded with them off screen.
Yeah, it's all off screen. There's so much. This show loves doing stuff off screen. Although thankfully this episode, Saru was not an off screen character.
Yeah.
I joked in episode 3 when it was a terrible B story with Saru and Tarina wedding planning bullshit.
Yeah.
And this was what I always wanted. It's like Saru, you know, sure, they do their romance stuff, which was nice, but it's Saru at the heart of the politics of the Federation, giving us, you know, little West Wing vibe. And we could only assume more action in the next. This is, you know, makes it worth it. And, you know, I wish we got a whole season of the Saru perspective at Starfleet HQ, but for, you know, Doug Jones reasons, that couldn't happen.
Yeah.
What do you think of Saru and Tarina, Lisa?
Oh, I like it. I really think that's a great pair. I mean, I think they've been playing it really nicely with, you know, her being a Vulcan, but yet clearly being in love with him. I like it.
Yeah, I like that little moment where she touched his chin.
Yeah.
And I liked when she said, like, it would be illogical to make you promise, but she's basically making him promise.
Right.
Which I thought, you know, there's just something, and that he And acknowledging that he feels the same way she does about duty and that that's what you do first.
Right.
So I liked all their scenes together, and I felt like they all made sense, and that is what you would do in those situations. It wasn't like a sidebar. It was a real moment that you would have before going off on a mission.
Agreed.
It does.
Also, her outfit was cool.
Always a plus.
It does bookend with that episode 3B story where he was being overly protective of her and all that kind of stuff. So I felt that they at least closed that loop. Now let's talk a bit about the Breen. Did anyone else feel like it's a little weird that Maul is in charge?
Yeah, a little bit. Although to me, it gave me real vibes of Daenerys in Game of Thrones. You know, when she kind of took over the Dothraki. And I wonder if that's kind of what they were going after.
That's interesting. I hadn't made that connection, but it's true. It is kind of the same thing. And it's because she's a take charge person who's recognized her power.
Yeah.
The way I explain it to myself is the Breen are mysterious. They're obsessed with the Scion, and she's a connection. That's kind of her Mother of Dragons angle. Yeah. Because, you know, we learned in this episode they have these rituals, and they were talking about the Scion returning. So it's the Breen aren't space Nazis. They're more like at least this faction, kind of like a space cult. You know, worshiping the Emperor Scion, as it were, who's going to be resurrected. You know, so it is right. There are these religious overtones. So she's, I guess, by her association, but just the way she was bossing them around and stuff, it's just like, wow, you know.
Maybe it's because she killed the Primarch. Maybe maybe they forgot to throw something in about how, and if you kill him, you're the new king or something.
Right.
Yeah, like I think she definitely earned her cred by killing the Primarch.
But we can only assume she's on a redemption arc. So the question is, did this episode help or hurt that? You know, we started feeling sympathy. I mean, we'd certainly feel sympathy for Locke, who's dead, and we can see that he had a kind of a horrible life and he just wanted to be free of it. And they've established that she's had, you know, a bad dad and, you know, just a terrible life. So are we feeling sympathetic about her? Because she was just sacrificing Breen scientists to this thing. Just send another one in, you know, let's see what happens. Do you guys feel sympathetic about her?
I feel like there was quite the contrast because she's sending those Breen soldiers in without thinking about it. But she's like, we're going to drop off Michael and Book, right? Like she's going to make sure that they'll drop them off on a planet. But in the meantime, these disposable, faceless Breen soldiers can just go right in, and who cares? So I don't know. What do you think, Lisa?
I don't know if she's really heading on a redemption arc. I anticipate that she's going to have control over the Pretender's tech at some point. I mean, they've been setting up way too much that she's, you know, going to use it to bring him back, and that she's going to use it to bring him back. And I think that she needs to have the opportunity to do that. And whether she actually does or not, I think is going to be kind of telling of her character. I mean, I think she would.
But that's all she cares about. She doesn't want power. She doesn't want to control the Breen Empire and all that nonsense. It is at least admirable that she loves him so much and that she's single-minded. She's essentially just using the Breen.
Yeah.
But was I the only one who, when they sent the like last scientist in, they attached the hose to him and he goes in? It totally reminded me of when they sent Bart in to the extra dimension in Treehouse of Horror, and they tied a rope to him. So I'm old. I'm sorry.
Well, it's like I think I got some Bart vibes there. I knew it wasn't going to work.
Sure.
Right. Yeah.
Like true. It was still a rope.
Yeah. Ropes do break.
Yes, they do.
Although, I mean, we assume they went somewhere. They're not dying because Michael went in. So it's an extra dimensional portal. So they're in another dimension, I guess, which is where the progenitor tech is.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, obviously, I haven't seen the finale yet because I've been waiting till we do this. But obviously, I think a lot of it's going to take place in there.
Yeah, definitely the two of them facing off. I can see that.
And there's two Breen in there too, right?
Well, that's true. The two that they kind of forced in there.
One thing I did appreciate about this episode, I thought the action scenes were done really well. Not just the live action, you know, but the visual effects, the stuff with the two black holes, which itself was fascinating. And primordial black holes are like a real thing. And the thing at the end when the ship goes in and the explosions, I thought that was all really well done. And, they're spending the money at the end of the season, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I agree that flying into the shuttle bay was impressive and something that we have not seen before.
And you could follow it.
Yeah.
Like sometimes with visual effects it can get chaotic, but I felt like no, it was clear and it looked great and it was really intense.
Yeah.
But in addition to all the action, there were so many small character moments that I really liked. I loved just the look between Book and Michael right before she goes in.
Mm-hmm.
And there's another really funny exchange, like when Adira is saying, like, I can do the calculations. And then there's this, like, Burnham says, are you asking to go on this mission, Ensign? And Adira says, yes. And Stamets is like, what? And Adira goes, I am. And Stamets goes, no. Like, it was just so cute and funny and worked. Like, after so many seasons of sometimes not getting that balance, moments like this show that they know how to do it now. They've got it.
Yeah, because you're right that just moments, I think, work much better than entire scenes. If we'd had Stamets and Adira having a long conversation about should I go on this mission and should I not, I think that would not have worked as well as what you said, the moment that they had.
And also the buildup, like we've had payoff. This relationship with Rayner has been building over all these episodes, and it wasn't just with Tilly. Like when Burnham says to Rayner, whatever it is, I trust you, just do it.
Right.
Like those two started off in complete conflict at the beginning of the season. And now he gets clues. She knows she can say things in code, and he's going to pick it up. And she knows that he's going to make the right decisions, and that is all earned.
Yeah, agreed.
This season has had a lot of lore from other shows, which they actually didn't do much in this episode. I mean, sure, going in disguise at another ship is Kirk did it when he went on the Romulan ship. It's old Star Trek, but
Janeway did it as a Borg, man.
Yeah, Kira dressed up as a Breen once with Dukat, but they're remembering their own lore. Like there was a Breen insult that was established in an early episode that they used to kind of trick the Breen. There was the Kelleran ballad that Michael used. So this season has just been much better at weaving things in throughout the season. It feels like they wrote the season and then went back and rewrote the season to make sure it all tied together, which we know in previous seasons that's step 2 never took place.
Yeah.
And not just this show, other shows like Picard season 1 was the worst at that. And they acknowledged that they should have redone stuff from earlier episodes to make sure they paid off in final episodes.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think it's part of what's made the whole season for me. Like, I mean, I actually agree with Lisa that the chasey, cluey part of it is contrived. But the results of that have been so good. I've been enjoying the season because it's been so carefully done. I mean, the only things, and I've said this in previous episodes, like some things got dropped that I was interested in, like Fred, the android, who I really wanted to see more of. And I found that just as Locke was getting to be a really interesting character, they killed him. And I assume he's coming back in the final episode, or he's not and something's happening. But a few of those things, but otherwise I feel like they've kept me interested.
Yeah, that's true. They have definitely kept my interest.
I feel like there's not a lot of things that I don't think they're going to be able to pay off this season. I mean, one thing that kind of went nowhere, I mean, Fred, I'm not sure they really set that up. That was more something we wanted to happen.
That wire talk, that's what set it up for me.
There was a thing with Tilly and some guy at the academy. Her little academy story, I feel like could have been fleshed out a little bit more this season of the struggles she's having. I'm not sure they're going to be able to wrap that up next week. But for the most part, I feel like every character has had a nice bit of growth and are either wrapping up or about to wrap up their arcs in this and the next episode, because it's really a 2-part finale. because we do end on a cliffhanger, even though it's a solid episode on its own, I would say.
Yeah.
Some two-parters feel like half an episode. This is a full meal, I feel.
Yeah.
The
So do you
weird
think-
thing, though, I feel they've been doing is with Zora. So they're not using Zora. Like when they have to do these complex, specific calculations, they don't ask Zora for help. But Zora will say, like, Ensign Adira, please report to the shuttle bay, which seems like a weird use for it. And also, weren't they on their way there anyway? Like, weren't they walking Adira to the shuttle bay?
I guess
Yeah.
so.
And
Yeah.
then all of a sudden Adira just goes, okay, bloop. Like, it's, those personal transport, it's the magic tech. Like the personal transporters make it weird.
I still don't quite get how the personal transporters work. I mean, how do
Well-
the transporters know where to take you?
Mind reading.
Exactly.
It's
Yeah.
the only
Yeah.
answer.
It's
The
a
same
psychic
with-
transporter.
The same with the programmable matter and the weapons and the whole, like they just
Yeah.
seem to, I've been complaining about the magic tech all season.
Yeah.
So even when it looks cool, it just doesn't quite make sense that they don't have to give any specific instructions.
Exactly.
I mean, everybody makes fun of the next gen episode, Schisms, where they're like, make a table. And then the thing makes in the holodeck and it makes
Right.
this perfect table. And I'm like, this is so much more than making a table that looks like what it's supposed to.
So here's a question. Did you guys come away with the impression that not only did the progenitors put the portal between these two black holes, but the progenitors made the black holes?
Oh,
That didn't even occur to me. I would prefer to believe that the black holes already existed and the progenitors chose a really difficult place to put it.
Okay.
yeah.
Because
I'm going with that.
it's God level tech. So, how powerful is it? But yeah, I mean, they're, just getting back to the finale. We've been predicting all season. There's just no way they're handing, Kovich the keys to this technology. Who knows what he would do with it.
Yeah.
And the Breen, I do agree that it makes sense for Maul to at least be given that choice
Mhm.
to save Locke, and maybe she has to choose between that and something else. But the answer to all of this has to be, yes, Michael, you are worthy, and she will make some decision of what to do with the technology.
You mean to destroy the technology?
Well, I mean, we've had various theories, like they're going to lock it in the Infinity Room forever. Or, because maybe it's like it probably can't be destroyed because it's so super powerful.
Or someone has to merge with it like Voyager.
Right.
Or they'll use it to recreate Book's planet because he has the root and the thing and the necklace.
Oh, that's
and-
interesting.
But he will
So-
have to stay there forever and protect the technology, and he can never leave. Or,
I'll stay there with
Yeah.
him. Sorry.
by the way, I mean, was it awkward or hilarious that he had that weird, sexy conversation where he was flirting with the Breen soldier, and we learned that the Breen are polyamorous and they're into these oil baths. Like they get up to some pretty freaky stuff.
I thought it was pretty funny.
Yeah, me too.
They would get along with denobulants, I think, in a weird way.
Well, that could be a whole new series.
Yes.
Yeah. They've been dropping enough fun stuff that I could see a future series, having a Breen character and kind of getting into their whole culture. I mean, there's a lot of potential there.
Sure, if they could have a Klingon on the bridge, why not having a Breen in Starfleet?
That's a great idea, actually. That would be, or maybe want to go to Starfleet Academy, hang out with Holly Hunter.
Yeah.
Does anyone have anything else? I was thinking we could start doing, finale predictions, or do we have anything else from this episode?
I don't think I do.
Yeah, I mean, I basically just think they've succeeded in so many ways that they didn't used to. And and they're allowing themselves to have more subtle moments, like when we, that Adira and Reese are watching what's going on with Maul, and we just see their reactions. They don't need to say anything. We
Right.
can just see their facial reactions. We can see Raynor's facial expressions, and they're letting a lot of that do the work and trusting it more, I
Mhm.
think, than they did before.
Yeah, they trust the actors, and more importantly, they need to trust the audience,
Yeah.
Yeah.
which they've done more this season.
Yeah, I think so.
And I feel like this episode exemplified everything they were trying to go for in the season, which is action, adventure, heart, and a fun tone, all in one 45-minute pack. It's a very short episode for the series, and certainly for the season. I mean, they're all over 50 minutes, and I think it's because it's a 2-part finale. Although the final part is probably really long because they added the extra bit. But my bet is the episode part of it is probably another 45. And they just split it in half, and
that could be.
Yeah. And everyone is in top form. Like every officer is being their very best. So, well, except for wanting to have a drink right now, but is basically at their best, with Captain Burnham leading the way. She is, to me, the strongest she's been so far as a captain. She has a lot of Kirk-like qualities, and I say that as a great compliment, but with her own spin on it, because she is unhesitating.
Yeah.
She knows what she wants to do. Everybody else is like, that's nuts. She's like, we're going to do it, and it's going to work. And I just really loved seeing that confidence in her, because she struggled with it for so long.
Yeah, I agree.
And the ultimate faith in her crew. I mean, the moment at the end when she is passing on the code to Rayner, for some reason, he's not telling her, whispering her into her ear, okay, I get it. I get what you're going for. So she's just like assumes and trusts her crew so confidently that this is going to work because it's a stupid, crazy plan. But if and only if she had a great crew that can pull it off.
Yeah, she's literally putting her life in their hands.
And trust that it's all going to work out.
Yeah.
Which was kind of, the message of the season, and her message to Maul. Because they've been trying over and over to redeem Maul. Like, Federation will protect you. I trust my crew. You need to learn to trust someone. I do feel like she's on some kind of, because Book's arc, I think, is tied to, because she is the daughter of his namesake. And I feel like for things to work out for Book, he's got to, bring her back from the dark side somehow.
Yeah, she was super sarcastic to him. Did you learn that from your mentor? Like, she had some kind of snarky comment there.
Of course, for that to work, he would have to get into the portal, which is probably going to happen, I guess, if they're going to come full circle.
Yeah, or maybe Michael will sort of win her over in a way, and then they'll both come out of the portal, and Maul will get some kind of interaction with Book.
Yeah. But they've got to wrap things up. Those two, they've got unfinished business. The wedding is unfinished business.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if we're going to see it, but
we better.
Well, now,
really?
This episode, I think they're, but yeah, it's like, how do you have an action-packed season finale and a wedding? Because it just seems hokey. If they do it, it's got to be
quick.
It's probably going to be quick, but it'll probably be, the episode will end, and it'll be like, 1 month later, and here's the wedding, and they're all together, and it'll be a nice little moment. Kind of like how they ended the last season, where they were at a kind of a party at Federation HQ, and Stacey Abrams showed up, and all that kind of stuff. So yeah. I'm not saying she's going to show up for this, but
no, I don't think so. So do you have, Lisa, do you have any big predictions for the finale?
I think that Michael is going to end up destroying the tech. That she's going to decide that nobody is worthy of having that kind of power.
Yeah, that's a good bet. I feel like they're going to go back into the TNG well, because that's where they started.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking they may go for something big, like Brent Spiner or something. We may get a massive cameo or something at the end to help wrap up what started with the chase. I mean, Patrick Stewart would be interesting, like a hologram of him talking about the progenitors or something, a recording, but I'm just not sure. But something. I feel like there's some big cameo coming.
I mean, they know they can get Frakes.
Probably.
Yeah, I mean, that would be the easiest thing. You just stick around, Jonathan. Get in the costume.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, what do you think is going to happen?
Well, they didn't know that this was the final season, so I think pretty much everyone's going to survive. But I feel like someone, and this could be Maul, is going to sacrifice themselves in some way, either to die or become the guardian of the progenitor tech or something like that.
Maybe Kovac.
Yeah. I feel like they're going to finally let us know what his deal is.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's time to tell us what his story is. I mean, the whole thing with bringing Locke back is like he didn't want to be the Scion.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's sort of an interesting, I mean, that's been an interesting setup that her whole way of getting him back is to say he's the Scion and that's what gets everyone to help her getting him back. But he didn't want that.
Right.
So that could somehow play in also.
I mean,
I do think Book will get his planet back.
There is a worry because, Saru is going on this mission to stop the other Primarch, this more powerful Primarch, to Hall. So there is a worry that, if they were to kill off a character, I mean, I don't think they are. I mean, but if someone
we know he went back and shot the epilogue.
That's true. He did say that, but that could be in memory. Who knows? I mean, this show, I don't feel like the show has the guts to kill off a main character anyway.
I don't know. I kind of wondered about that with the wedding planning. It's always like, the young rookie who just got married who gets killed.
Right, or the soldier who looks at the picture of his fiance
exactly
before he goes off to war.
Exactly.
Oh no, they have set up for him to die in the finale. Yeah. I'm just saying I don't think they have the guts to do it.
Well, it totally depends on whether the actor wanted to come back or if they wanted, he has other projects to go off and do.
If he was willing to not come back for next season.
Mm-hmm.
A couple other things need to get tied up. I feel like Culber's arc, he's on this like weird finding spiritual awakening arc. I feel like they've got to do something with that.
So he's going to have thoughts about this tech too, since that's exactly what he's been. He's been dead. He's come back to life. He has been experimenting with this weird tech with his dead grandmother. So these are themes that have been preoccupying him.
I think he's going to meet a progenitor. He's going to meet God, is my prediction, and have a conversation with God, because the progenitors created us all. So they're as close as we're going to get, right? So it may be that, he helps Michael through her decision or something. But I mean, they must have set that up because all his talk about it just seems like it was going somewhere. Raynor's another sacrifice possibility, but I hope that he ends up like being promoted and maybe he goes to the academy or something.
I don't think something's going to happen to him because this is a total not related to the story thing, but I think I saw an early interview with him saying he was going to be in the next season.
Oh, really? Oh, well, there you go.
I think I remember him saying, he was kind of bummed when he heard about it because he thought he was going to be in the next one. He's such a great character.
Yeah, he is.
A fan suggested this, and I like it, which is because we know that there's this other Breen out there, and there's the Dreadnought, and so there's probably going to be a battle because it's Discovery. So at some point, the ISS Enterprise is going to return.
Oh, totally.
With but now all 32nd century floating nacelle, and maybe Owo and Detmer have been promoted to, one of them's a captain or something. Maybe they're saving your big Detmer moment for the finale. And
yeah, they should. I mean, they went off in the Enterprise, so they should come back in it.
Exactly.
That's very Trek.
Yeah.
I think that would be pretty cool.
Yeah, I agree.
That'd be satisfying.
But redesigned. All the evil stuff stripped off the ship.
Just a couple of emblems. That's all there was.
That's true. They didn't do much
really
with
do.
it.
There were no agony booths. There was nothing they really had to take
They
down.
just erased the I.
Right.
Put a U in and say, we're done.
We're good.
Anyway, that's all that's pretty much all I got, which is plenty. I'm just very excited. I'm sad and excited about the season and series finale. And then this thing that they added on.
What's the thing that they added on?
They didn't know that they were going to be done.
Right.
And so then they'd already finished the season. So when they got the announcement, they came back and filmed like an epilogue.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, they got to come back and do that. And I think everybody came back to do it. I know Doug obviously in Sonequa, but I'm pretty sure they got everybody.
Yeah.
So at first it was described as reshoots, but then we've come to understand there was really no reshooting. So the episode is going to end as intended, and then there's going to be this extra bit, and it'll probably be very obvious when they switch from the stuff that was shot in 2022 to the stuff that was shot in 2023.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Like,
it might be years later and they're old, or it might, I have no idea.
That's so cliched, but it's almost certainly going to be that, because what else do you do? Because you want to kind of, it's kind of like how Voyager finale started. There'll probably be kind of that, they'll be all together and they'll be like, oh, how are things at the Academy? And, that kind of jazz. So it'll all be through dialogue. Everyone will say, oh, well, I've got 5 kids or whatever it is.
Lisa, while we have you, I want to ask you something about last week's episode, which was the one in the beautiful library.
Yes.
Did you get any sacred ground vibes?
I did.
From that one? Okay.
I definitely did. Michael being put on essentially a spiritual journey. That definitely occurred to me.
I'm thinking she knew what she was supposed to do, and it was really just in her own, like the way Janeway was so certain, like, oh, I just have to do this. And they're like,
right.
Sure, just do that.
Right. Yeah, no, I definitely saw that.
All right, cool. It wasn't just me. Thank you.
Nope.
And then, Lisa, why don't you tell us what you're up to next? Tell our listeners where they can find you and what you're doing next.
Well, they can find me at the TrekMovie briefing room, which still comes out every 2 weeks, I believe. And, pretty much anywhere you get podcasts, Apple, Spotify, that kind of thing. Personally, I'm working on a new screenplay, which is like a supernatural thriller kind of thing, which is a little different than anything I've done. So that's kind of fun to work on.
A feature or a pilot? It's
a feature.
Nice.
Yeah, no, the TV market is really constricted at the moment. Everybody I talk to, all my friends in the TV business say that it's really, really difficult to get a job, much less get a show on the air.
With the way the movie market is, where do you think the sweet spot is? Is it like mid-budget, low-budget horror? Where do you think the action is these days?
Low-budget horror. Yeah, because you could be really effective without much money.
I also want to thank you, Lisa, because I'm on the team that puts Trek Talks together. And you did that Tuvix panel, which I think was maybe the highlight of the whole thing. And we absolutely needed a Voyager writer in that group, and you did a great job. And thank you for that.
Oh, thank you. It was fun to do. It was obviously an interesting episode to talk about, especially with everybody who we had on the panel.
Yeah, it was a good group.
Yeah.
Fantastic panel, great discussion, and we did an article on it, and it sparked, of course, it sparked the same discussion again. It's it'll never end.
No, never end.
Nope. Maybe
point,
Tuvix
right?
is in the interdimensional portal. There's a prediction for you.
There you go.
All
in
right.
some alternate dimension somewhere.
He is. I think that he's in one of the comic books. He's out there somewhere in some dimension. All right. Well, thank you for coming on, Lisa, and hopefully we'll have you back to talk about Voyager and other stuff.
Absolutely.
Awesome. And we'll see you in Vegas.
Yes. Not quite sure which panels I'm doing yet, but I will definitely be there.
Well, so will we. So we'll see you there.
Great.
Thank you. All right. So there's only one more episode of Star Trek Discovery to go. I can't believe it. I'm very sad. But I won't dwell on that. Let's wrap up with our bits of the week. Tony, why don't you start?
I'm going to cheat with 2, but I'm going to make them quick. The first is that the video game that I have spoken highly of before, Star Trek Resurgence, was just re-released again, this time on Steam. So if you're on PC and you use Steam, there's a new opportunity to play the game. Check back on the site on Friday. We're going to be giving away some Steam codes. It's just, I couldn't recommend this game higher, even for people who are not gamers. And my second thing is a reminder of something I've mentioned before, which is that the Lower Decks stream-a-thon is this weekend. It's on the 25th, which is Saturday. For more information, check out SaveStarTrekLowerDecks.com.
All right, then I'm going to do two really quick ones too. They're both articles that are well worth reading. One is on the Star Trek site, the official site, and it's written by Patrick Kwok-Choon, who plays Reese on Star Trek Discovery. And the day that he was being captain of Discovery, his wife was having their baby. And he did make it back in time, but he wrote it. It's a beautiful piece just about working and being a dad and making it there in time. It's lovely. So everyone should go read that. It's such a nice, it'll be so nice for his kid as a grown-up to be able to read that. It's beautiful. And then there was another great article that came out today on the Emmy site, which was Brown and Braga talking about the finale of Star Trek The Next Generation because it's the 30th anniversary of the finale. And so he did a great interview and talked about some of the choices they almost made for that and why he stayed there and didn't go over to Deep Space Nine and stuff like that. So two great Star Trek reads for you. And then before we go, we have a winner of our Trek Long Island tickets for the weekend. Tachyon Anomaly, congratulations. We have your email and we will reach out to you. We'll see you at Trek Long Island.
Bring your triple. So that's it for the week. We'll be back for the season and series finale of Star Trek Discovery next week.
See you then.